conditions for our trip to Lake Rathbun, they sure wouldn't be the ones we encountered. Unseasonably cold temperatures, at least 20 degrees below normal, high winds and clear skies were what we found. But when you get the opportunity to go fishing, you make the most of it. Corey Batterson is one of the best crappie anglers in the Midwest, and if anyone could show us some crappies, Corey was the guy. There he is. Another little one, Corey. He wrapped it a little bit better than that last one.
I felt it.
You felt it too, huh? You sure it's my jig?
Yeah.
They're right in the middle of that brush pile, aren't they?
Right.
Gee whiz.
This cold front to come through last night's got them buried in it. That's what it is.
They're
Instead of being up on top of it, they were buried down inside of it.
And you said this is like a willow brush pile.
It's a willow, yeah.
And typically there'll be pretty good fish in here. You said 10 to 12 to 14 inches?
14 inches. Put out a lot of 14-inch fish this year.
Fish?
Getting a little bigger.
A little bigger.
10-inch fish.
Is that a 10-inch fish? Is it? They're pale down here. Is that dirt, that stained water make
dirtier water has a really pale color.
Boy, he really didn't hit it hard at all, though. Just came up and...
Cold fronts really got him shut down.
Yeah. Ooh, that is a slab, isn't it? That's the size you were telling us about.
That's the size.
That is a good one. Is that 12 or 13 inches?
That's a 12.
12 incher?
11 and a half.
Boy, they're buried in those cribs. Now, we're fishing a crib here, or a brush pile. They call it cribs in some areas, brush piles in others. Yeah. But after the cold front goes, let's put it back. After the cold fronts go through, how do these crappies react?
Well, when they're active, they'll be around this wood. But when you get a cold front come through, that brush or the wood, they'll bury up against it. Just kind of, I don't know whether it's...
They'll dig
get
in.
real inactive and they'll just bury down in there.
When the fish are active, they'll be near the top of the brush pile.
They'll sit on the top over, suspend over the top of it.
And then when in negative conditions, they'll slide right down underneath.
Give them someplace to get down in.
Tap, tap, tap. There he is. Boy, he came right out of the top of that brush pile, didn't he?
Yep.
Right in the top. We're using 8-pound solar line, Corey. I understand the 8-pound test. You know, this is heavy cover we're fishing in.
Right.
You've got to get them out of there. But why do you like the green so well?
Well, there's a lot of times you'll see a hit before you'll feel a hit. Especially with the crappies. And that can mean a little big difference between losing a fish and catching a fish.
You see the hit.
You'll see the hit more than you'll feel the hit.
Because, especially in this type of weather, they're not hitting hard.
There's one.
Boy, they're right in the top, aren't they? You're just swinging that thing once and he comes right out of there. But they're right in the top and they're not hitting hard. And you see the line jump.
You'll see it twitch, whereas a clear line, you can't see your line as well.
Yeah, and you don't think the green color bothers the fish.
No, not at all.
They don't care, do they?
No.
Better one. He hit a little bit heavier. These guys seem to be getting a little more aggressive.
I think this particular school and this pile here, they definitely got a good attitude about feeding.
These are the most aggressive ones we found today. The big ones aren't here, but just as far as action, they're here. I think the sun has been out long enough where it's had time to warm the water up, and that will maybe provide a little inspiration.
Yeah, and it's got the cold front's been out here for about 12 hours now. And you got to feed sometime.
Well, that's the thing. They've got to feed sometime during the day, and it may be a short-lived spurt of activity. But if you're there, you can cash in and catch a lot of fish in a short period of time.
One thing, you find these areas that got these small fish on a day like today, and the little fish are biting. That doesn't necessarily mean that the big ones won't be in there or aren't there. The big ones, they've got enough body fat where they don't want to feed for a couple days. They won't, but it seems like the small fish will always bite.
Small fish will always go.
Yeah.
Ooh.
There he goes.
Small fish will always go, right?
Yeah.
He didn't realize that until we said it, and they decided to be a good idea.
Yeah.
If you had a couple tips to offer for fishing in negative weather conditions, what would they be for fishing crappies when fishing's tough?
Slow. Fish it slow.
Go slow.
Don't,
Tip with live bait.
and don't just pull in on the spot and hit it and say, well, they're not here, let's move. It's taken us, it takes you a while to get the fish bounce in front of their nose until finally they decide, well, because they are far from being aggressive today. Missed another one.
It seems like they feed in spurts too, don't they?
Yeah.
You catch 4 or 5, and then they move on.
Sometimes I think it takes you catching a fish out of a school or out of a pocket to get the rest of them really going.
We're just vertically jigging right here, almost right below the boat. Just letting that thing bounce in their nose a while. The crappies were holding extremely tight to brush piles. We found the brush piles with our bottom line sonar, then dropped a marker a few feet away from the brush. We didn't want the marker right on the brush pile because a hooked fish might get tangled in the marker line. We simply used the marker as a point of reference. Action wasn't fast in Rathbun, but that's fishing. Rathbun is full of crappies, as well as walleyes and white bass. The crappies were tough on Lake Rathbun. We tried a bunch of different baits. If the walleyes would have been going real well, we would have gone with a power grub. That's a real good bait when the fish are active. That action tail really calls them in. As it was, the foxy jig, the lipstick jig, the gypsy jig, all of these baits tipped with minnows did a good job of producing fish under tough conditions. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm Bob Jensen. We'll see you next week on the Outdoor Sportsman. Wow. You're on them, Corey.
They get a little bigger.
They are.
It's about a 10.5-inch fish.
You're on
10-inch
them. Now,
fish.
what color are you using?
I went to that orange with a chartreuse tail on it.
That real bright one again.
Bright orange with chartreuse tail. That's good.
We've been experimenting with a lot of different colors here, but it seems those ones with the fluorescent, brighter colors are far more productive.
In a darker colored upper body, but in a bright color. This is kind of that neon orange with a yellow chartreuse tail.
Do you find the fish are color conscious a lot of the time, or just in certain conditions?
Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. Like when fish are really aggressive, color really doesn't seem to have to do a factor. You catch them on one and turn around and catch them on another, but sometimes when they're like they are today in a neutral, very negative mode, they're a good fish. That's a fish. That's a fish.
I tell you what, you've convinced me, Corey. You said orange and chartreuse?
Orange and chartreuse.
You convinced me.
That's a
right straight below the boat.
Right straight below.
Again, they're not horses, but they're far better than what anybody else is doing today. And this is a tough condition. Orange head, chartreuse tail.
Right.
Right at the top of there, Corey.
Another one.
Now we're using 3.5-inch fathead minnows, and a lot of times people use a lot smaller minnows for crappies. Why do you like the bigger size?
I like the bigger. Well, like you can see, a small crappie is not going to refuse a large bait. I think it gives off a better vibration. In this dirty water, then fish are going to feed more by using your lateral line and filling the bait than they are by seeing the bait.